Now, what makes a good architect, and particularly what makes a great one? Well, this is taken from the blog or the article there by Don Awalt, who wrote in Microsoft's in the developer network somewhere, but you can find it if you need to. His conclusion after looking at a lot of architects was that the really good architects were able to deal with a system in different levels of abstraction and not mix them up. So they could think of things in several different ways. Now, with time, maybe you become a good architect. But immediately, the problem is that what happens is that people start working on a system, start designing a system, and they don't quite know how something is going to work. And they're uncomfortable with not knowing. And so they immediately stop what they're doing. They stop doing the design and start trying to figure out how the code's going to work. So they're stuck into the programming. And once you get into the programming, it's really difficult to come out again. Now, I do acknowledge that good architects and very experienced software developers know approximately how something's going to be implemented. So they're not overly concerned when they come across something in the design that the details are not fully worked out. They know enough about it and they've got enough experience to be able to say, well, it'll work roughly like that, or they have enough confidence to say, I know I can figure that out in good time. For those who can't do that, there is, as I say, this enormous temptation to dive into the detail and figure out how it all works. So the rush to coding has to be resisted as much as possible. Try to go and get the design, the architecture done first. Now, particularly as I've tried to pitch this whole point about architecture as a way of studying the problem, a way of modeling the problem, so you can determine how it's actually going to work. Now, layers of abstraction. It's easy to say layers of abstraction, but what are we talking about? Are we talking about 15 layers of abstraction or what? Generally 4, about 4. There's in architecture generally there's about 3 different things. You've got a subsystem, you've got a component, and you have a program within that, separate thread or something. This breakdown into really big units, sub pieces within that, and small bits within that. This 3-layer or 3 or 4 layers of abstraction is fairly common across the whole of engineering. Now, I did look up the layers, domain layers, for most software systems, and I found a model that had 4 layers. So there's the domain layer, which is the highest level of abstraction, and the system becomes a black box, and you see the system is incorporated into some bigger system of getting work done. So you've got, say, the system, the organization, the people, the organization structure, and a few other bits and pieces. So that's the domain level. Within that you have business process. So the business process is treated as a breakdown of this system into components that constitute the business process. Within that, there is the logical level that zooms inside each part of the, say, the business process, or inside the black box a bit, and exposes the high-level design of the system. Then you get the physical layer, and this is the structure of the system implementation. Now, that is only one of several different ways you could look at the levels of abstraction in a system. Personally, for architecture, I think it's probably better to look in terms of object. The aggregated objects become a component, the aggregated components become a subsystem, and the aggregation of the subsystems become the system. So there's those levels of abstraction. So in summary then, Great architects are able to think in terms of different levels of abstraction. Too many software developers get impatient with this architecture step and rush into coding. The whole idea of a layered abstraction is very common in engineering, not just software engineering, but all engineering. And 3 or 4 layers of abstraction is fairly typical. You don't need much more than that.